I remember walking in and seeing like all the hot guys serving like topless, and was like, oh, what's this? This is interesting. I quite like this bar. This is a bit more my vibe, I think.
Hello, this is Kay Anderson, and you are listening to Lost Spaces, the podcast that mourns the death of queer nightlife. Every episode, I talk to a different person about a venue from their past, the memories they created there, and the people that they used to know. This week's guest is self-confessed pop culture expert Charlie Sayce, creator of RuPaul's Drag Race UK Fans and host of God Save the Queens, a drag race review show on Glitterbeam Radio. We caught up to talk about his end of uni days living in Worthing, which is a small seaside town in the south of England. It was here that he found the only gay bar in town, the Jack Horner, where, despite looking like a generic old man pub, they played Britney Spears, had dodgy karaoke nights, and gave him a chance to explore his identity. But before we get into the episode, I want to ask you a question. What was the first gay bar that you ever went to? If you're listening on Spotify, you can answer this question within the app. But if you're not on Spotify, get in touch with me anyway. Find me on most every social media platform as Lost Spaces Pod, or get in touch through my website, lostspacespodcast.com. I really want to know where people are listening from and where your first queer experience was. All right, let's get into the episode.
Do you know my first like gay memory, which is like a really weird thing to think, but I remember being in primary school and playing kiss chase and thinking I'm on the wrong team. I don't want to chase the girls and kiss them. They're like my friends. This is weird. But when the boys come over who I don't really interact with, I'm like kissing the girls, I remember thinking, oh, I'd rather be doing that. And that thought had kind of like always weirdly been there with me. Like, oh, maybe there's something I need to explore there. I don't know.
But it was one of those thoughts like that was not at the front of your brain. It was like somewhere.
It was under a glitter curtain somewhere lurking in the back, like in a box full of like feather boas, and it's like creeping away.
So has that box been opened? Like, it's safe to say yes, right?
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, the box was flung open. I think that once I kind of like started like investigating that side of myself, I felt so much more comfortable, so much more myself. And quite interestingly, like recently, when I've been doing this stuff associated with Drag Race, a few people that I've known from like my past in like Yeovil and Worthing that I still have like on Facebook, a lot of them have kind of contacted me or messaged me and been like, oh, we're so like, it's so exciting that you're like involved in that show and you just seem like so much more comfortable with who you are. And I don't think I realised that I was repressing something even though I was, you know what I mean? I just thought I was going around my normal life and kind of being myself, but actually I hadn't really fully opened up and been who I was meant to be.
It's so hard to know, isn't it? Because at that age, like, I think you just think that you should be miserable.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you're like, well,
yeah.
Everyone else is pretty miserable. So like, it kind of makes sense that I'm miserable. Like, you just kind of accept that there are those kind of weird
and
things that you're putting up.
You really don't see like on TV and films like gay relationships. And I think like
if you do, they're tragic.
Yeah, they are tragic, or they're people who are there to be kind of laughed at or mocked or that kind of thing. You know what I mean? It wasn't, so I think I just always thought that wasn't an option. You know what I mean? Like being younger and being into feminine things, like, it was the classic, we'd get presents at Christmas and I'd want to play with my sister's presents. I wasn't interested in what I was getting. My mum used to smuggle me Polly Pockets, the toy. So my dad was like a proper like South London geezer, and my mum used to buy me like Polly Pockets and be like, oh, that's for you, but when dad's around, like maybe play with the other things. And he was typical wanted a footballer and he got a ballet dancer. Like that's kind of how I see it. And so my mum would like smuggle me these like kind of more girls' toys and was very accepting and much more let me kind of be myself when I was growing up than I could around him. You know what I mean?
But so did he ever find out? Did your
my
sister
dad
ever use it against you, like threaten
No,
you to
well,
tell him?
no, she never used it against me. I think once she confiscated from me like her baby camper van toy because I was playing with it so much, and I remember
Wait,
really
a baby camper van?
sorry, a Barbie
Okay.
camper van. Sorry,
It's like
Barbie.
babies can't drive.
A Barbie camper van, and she was like, "Oh, you're not playing with that anymore." And I remember really like kicking it down the stairs over Christmas and being like, "Oh, whoops, it was on the top of the stairs," like having this real like angry moment of, "I want to play with the camper van." But no, like, you know, as I've got older and you know, I think my dad's attitude has changed as the world's kind of changed, you know what I mean? And he's fully like accepting of who I am, you know what I mean? There's no kind of qualms or issues there, which is lovely. I've been very blessed that there's not really anyone in my family who hasn't kind of accepted me for who I am. And I think that was like a non-negotiable thing, because it's like, you either accept me or I won't be in your life anymore. That's kind of it. I wasn't prepared to not be me. Once I got there, I was like, I'm never going back. That's it.
That's so interesting. That's, I mean, sorry, I say that's interesting because of the contrast between like not knowing and being so tentative.
Yeah.
And then when you got to that stage, just being like, nah, man, this is it.
That's it. Because I think that was probably like my subconscious going, look, you could have been a lot more yourself as a teenager and not kind of hid behind other things because you were repressing it. And, you know, I feel like it was just once I really got there and I opened that door and, you know, I remember like having my first date with a guy and like the first time I slept with a guy, and I was like, there's no going back from this now. Like, this is who I am. This is what I want. Like, there is no going back. It's done.
Let's explore that a bit more. Like, usually people's first experiences are awful and you put them off for quite a while, and it sounds like that wasn't your experience.
The experience itself was a drunken experience of a guy who was quite a bit older than me at the time, and
probably still is.
And probably still is, yeah. Well, I hope he is. Yeah, it wasn't like the most fun experience because it was just kind of marred with confusion and like, oh, have I done the right thing? Like, is this really what I want to do? Like, I was holding myself back quite a bit, and it was an odd experience. Like I say, it was a real quick like meet up, do the deed and go. And like for your first experience, you kind of want it to be a bit more like a bit more loving and emotional, perhaps, and with someone you kind of trust a bit more. But you know what? I think I just kind of wanted to, it's such a bad analogy, but break the seal. I just wanted to like almost like just be like, right, well, let's do it. And then if it isn't what I want, I might know afterwards. And I remember reflecting on it and being like, okay, it was a bit weird, a bit drunken, maybe a little bit sleazy for a first time, but at least it was like, okay, but I enjoyed being in the moment with a guy and kissing a guy, and you know that.
Yeah,
vibe.
totally. No, and like, you know, from my own experience, I remember when I was a teenager, like buying all of that kind of heteronormative crap about like, you've got to wait for the one, you've got to make sure it's special, and then I was just waiting so long because no one wanted to like be my one that I just had to get to a point where I was like, no, it's fine. Like I'm just, you know, I'm far less socially awkward than I was at that point. Yeah. So I just got to this point where I was like, I just have to do this because it's something that I want to experience, and like it doesn't have to be perfect. But so you met him on not Grindr, Gaydar.
On Gaydar. Yeah.
So what happened? What was your profile name?
Oh, it was Electro Heart, because I was like a really cool kid. Like I was like, I'm Electro Heart on also, and actually it's like a really old email of mine now, and I probably shouldn't be divulging that because there's probably some hidden Gaydar Grindr emails sitting in that account somewhere.
Like at GeoCities or
I think I was at Hotmail. I think it was at hotmail.com. Yeah, it was a Hotmail. Electroheart at hotmail.com. That was a choice. That was one of those emails where, you know, you have to go into the real world and like start applying for jobs and shit, and like on your CV you're like Electroheart, and I was like, fuck this shit. So yeah, I remember I literally was in like my dorm room, and I think I drank like a bottle of red wine and just went on there and was like chatting away to guys, and this guy was literally like, look, I'll come and pick you up, and he picked me up. We went back to his, we drank a lot more. Yeah, we did the thing, and then he was pretty much like, oh, okay, I'll call you a cab. And I was like, oh, okay, bye. And then it was like within what felt like probably about an hour's get in the cab, and I was back in my dorm room, and it was like, oh, wow, like that was it was weird. It was really weird. But oddly, do you know what? It didn't like put me off. Like, I don't know. It just felt like, okay, cool. Well, that's it. And the next time, hopefully, it'll be.
Well, so do you remember then the feeling like being in your dorm room, like coming back, and like what were you processing? Like what were you thinking?
I guess I was, there was a little bit of like worry as to like, or have I been safe? Have I made sure that, that side of things have been taken care of? And kind of like, because I had a few drinks, being like, right, have I definitely made sure that bit kind of happened? Which it had, thankfully. And then very much like, that felt a bit cold, and the whole thing was a bit like, oh, and probably unfortunately set me up for quite a few years of that whole culture of just drinking and one night stands and that kind of vibe. But the actual act itself and being with another man, like it didn't feel wrong. It felt really nice, and it may have been a bit short and sweet, but at least it felt like, oh, I want to do that again. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. So was there any sense of like thrill or relief?
Yeah.
Or was it more like the practical
and
side
a bit like, obviously it felt a bit naughty and a bit like, oh God, like I've done that thing that I've maybe been thinking about for quite a few years, like especially like growing up as like a teenager and stuff. And when you have like your own sexual fantasies, and for me it was like always kind of like men and women. There was never, the man part was like always there. And it was like, oh, I finally like done that, you know what I mean? And but I think it's just, I probably did the same thing that I feel like, at least in my friendship group, a lot of the guys kind of did. And it was like that, it was a bit of a drunken one night thing, but it was, okay, cool, but I've done it now. And now I can actually maybe look for more like the relationship side of things, which I didn't really want for quite a long time. It took quite a while to actually want to have like that relationship vibe. And
so you knew that you didn't want to pursue a relationship.
Yeah, I was. Do you know what I think? Because the relationship I had with my ex-girlfriend was very intense, and it just felt like I didn't want any of that side of it for quite a while. I just wanted to be able to enjoy myself and have fun with it, and knowing that I was moving to like Worthing and like a lot closer to Brighton at this point, and being like, well, Brighton's like, like the gay capital of the UK, like there'll be plenty of fish in that sea. And it just felt really like that was what I was looking for quite a long time before I was more interested in like the relationship side of things.
So it was kind of like putting your life on hold because over here is something super exciting.
Yeah.
So don't rush into it.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah,
That
absolutely.
makes sense.
Yeah.
So living in Worthing, living in this share house, being the mother hen, which those are maybe my words and not your words.
Oh no, mine definitely mother hen going. There was I'll cook a Sunday roast vibes, like 100%.
Oh, I wish I had a flatmate.
Yeah.
So firstly, were you out to your flatmates?
Yeah, I had come out to my my mum and like my immediate family after that summer, and whilst I was back home, I went back on the old gaydar. You're noticing a pattern here, and I met this guy who lived in Ashford, which was not far from my family's home in Kent, and we used to go into Ashford like on every Wednesday to do shopping and that. And this guy was a dancer and he was beautiful. And he messaged me on Gaydar, and I thought, he's well out of my league. So I didn't really I wasn't really getting involved. And I felt like obviously like very small city vibes that people were just messaging everyone. So I didn't reply to this guy. And then he sent quite a few more messages, and then he was like, oh, I think I saw you in Ashford last week with a lady, and you were both shopping. And obviously that was my mum. And I was like, oh yeah, you might have. And he was like, oh, why are you not messaging me back? And I was like, oh, I don't know, I thought like maybe I'm not what you're looking for. And he was like, well, I'm messaging, so I'm looking. And I was like, okay, cool. This guy was very confident. And I was like, well, next time in Ashford, why don't we go for a coffee? So whilst we were in Ashford, I had to say to my mum like, oh, my friend, there's always a friend, right? My friend.
I'm sure I've told you about him. I'm sure
I've mentioned my friend. I'm sure. I know. What, you have never said that name before? I was like, he's going to be in Ashford, so I might go and meet him for a coffee. And my mum was a bit like, oh, okay. Like, okay. Obviously, me and my mum are very close, and because I've been at uni for quite a while, like the sun was like out time, you know what I mean? And I was like, I'll be about an hour and I'll be back. And I met this guy, and I really liked him, like very, very quickly. He was like the kind of guy that I was looking for. And I remember we were in Ashford, which is I'd say a very...
Wait, so hang on, like before we get to Ashford.
Yeah.
let's paint the picture. What was the type of guy you were looking for?
Oh, he was really pretty. Can I just he was just really pretty.
Oh, so that was
babe, he was just
basically.
Really pretty, like really pretty. He was young, attractive. He was a dancer, so he had lots of pictures.
And flexible.
Great body, flexible, and just was very interesting as well. Like he was a bit weirdly quite like closed off, like wouldn't tell me too much about him, which just made it more exciting. It was like, oh, I don't really know a lot about you, but I want to. And yeah, that was kind of weird. It was really exciting. It's probably the first time I'd had like a crush on like a real life guy.
So okay, so pretty and emotionally unavailable.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, brilliant. Okay, cool.
He was like the David Beckham wall poster had come to life. Do you know what I mean? I was like, oh, this is exciting. And so, yeah, we started hanging out. And I remember we used to like sneak off round this church in Ashford to like have a quick snog. And it felt really naughty because it felt really like a bit dangerous. You know what I mean? Because, you know, there was a lot of... you know, kind of rough and ready teens lurking around Ashford, do you know what I mean? It was very that kind of vibe. So this felt really exciting and like, oh, it's like an actual guy whose like name I know. And, you know, that's a change. That's nice. And yeah, so...
Who's not saved in my phone as girlfriend number 3.
Guy with the pink curtains in the picture. No. And so I remember saying to my mum one night, like, oh, can my friend come and stay? And it was like, obviously, she was like, yeah, your friend can come and stay. And it was this weird, like, I know, you know, I know, we know, but we're not going to have the conversation yet. And then he did come and stay over. I was very respectful of being in my mum's house. I mean, not really much happened. A bit of kissing and all that, but I was like, no, I'm not. It just felt a bit like I'm in, like, my, you know, like my teenage bedroom as well. Like, when you go back home after uni, you feel like you're under mum's rules again, that kind of vibe. So I was like, let's be good. And then...
Yeah, but you were also a horny teenager.
Yeah, I know, right? It was difficult, and there was no churches to sneak round to have that cheeky snog. And I remember I went down in the morning for like breakfast, and my mum looked a bit upset. And I was like, oh God, it's happening. Like, we're going to have the conversation. And she was like, oh, like, don't take me for a fool, firstly. Do you know what I mean? Like, if this person's staying over, if that's a romantic thing, then we need to have some rules in place for that. And I was like, God, I'm fucking 21. Like, please, this is too much. And then she got really upset, and I thought she was upset because of me and who I am, and it wasn't. It was the complete opposite. She was like, I'm just so scared that you won't be able to hold your partner's hand walking down the road without being judged. And that really hit a nerve with me, and I was like, wow, she's not worried about the fact that this is who I am. She's worried about how other people are going to treat me, and that I'm going to be treated differently, and I'm going to have to kind of fight against, you know, people's bigoted ideas and morals and that kind of thing. And that was really... like, it was a real moment in me and my mum's like relationship and friendship, and we hugged it out. We both got really upset, and I was like, listen, Mum, I was like, you know, I've been called every name under the sun, you know what I mean? Like, I've got a very, very, very thick skin when it comes to this kind of thing, and I'll always be safe, you know what I mean? I'll always be aware of my surroundings, and that's probably stayed even till today. But I really like this person, and that is who I am. And she was like, oh, I don't care about that. She's like, you know, but just, you know, I want you to be able to be in a restaurant with your partner and hold hands. And obviously this is before like civil partnerships and all that kind of vibe. And, you know, I think it was more that side of things that was difficult for her, which was a real like blessed relief, to be honest. She just cared.
Yeah, it's I had very similar conversations with my mum about this kind of thing. And as I'm getting older, I can appreciate more the perspective that she was bringing to the conversation and why she had those concerns, why she had those worries. But I know at the time I was just like, oh, for fuck's sake, like, can you not just let me be me? And can you not just say like, oh, I'm just really happy that you are who you are? Yeah. And I think I held a lot of that resentment for a long time in like... Because it's kind of victim blaming, right? Like, that's maybe not the right term, but it's kind of being like, oh, I wish this wasn't your life because your life is going to be so much harder. Yeah. And rather than like, the world is fucked up and I'm really sorry that that's going to happen to you. It's like, I just wish that this wasn't happening. And then you're like, well, so so I have to change. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. I remember saying it is a real struggle being fabulous. And my mum's always reminded me of that sentence. She's like, it's such a struggle being fabulous, isn't it, Charlie? And, no, but you're absolutely right. I knew it was just more that she just had that idea of, oh, I'm going to be out in public and someone's going to say something. But I was like, it doesn't matter because people are always going to say something. You know what I mean? There's always something to be said. And you've just got to learn to not take it to heart. And I've learned that the hard way, but I've learned it. And now it's like, oh, come up with something original. If someone shouts something original, I actually find it really amusing. You know, I mean, obviously I'm lucky. I live in that Brighton bubble. You don't get it very often. But, you know, every now and then when you're somewhere and you hear someone say something, and if it's original, I'll always give them like a round of applause. Like, I've not heard that one yet. That's fucking brilliant. I love it.
So do you have examples?
Oh my God. Someone said something the other day. No, it was really. Oh, do you know what I remember? So I remember being in London actually, and I was in my height of feeling my fabulous like 20-year-old self, and I was like really strutting down a road, and as I went past this woman, she just went, "Here, do you want some chips with that mince?" And I was like, yes, I fucking do. I'll have cheesy chips as well. Thank you. That's always been one of my favourites.
Oh, props to that woman.
Props to that woman.
So this isn't an important question, but when you were having this conversation with your mum, was this guy in the other room?
He was still in bed. He was still in bed. I know. It's really awkward, right? He was still in bed, and then I remember, like, I went back upstairs and he was like, oh, are you okay? You were, like, quite a long time. And I was like, I think I've just come out to my mum. Like, and he was like, oh, she didn't know. And I was like, well, I think she knew. I think we just haven't really said it out loud. And he was like, oh, that's fab. And I was like, yeah, it's pretty fab. And then we just like went about our day. It was really weird. Like, I mean, listen, I'm really lucky and very blessed and privileged that, you know, like a kind of coming out story was like a conversation in a kitchen that didn't lead to any sort of like, you know, bad ill feeling or breakdowns of family relationships or ostracization from your family. Like, I'm very, very lucky. So I say it very lightheartedly, but I'm also fully aware that I'm incredibly blessed to have such an incredible family that just accepted me for who I am. But like I said earlier, I just don't think I gave many people a choice. And it was like, okay, if that's the case, then, you know, I don't know if we can be part of each other's lives. And it's just that kind of like, that's just how it needs to be for me to kind of get through, I think.
Did you actually lose anyone?
No, I didn't. Like I say, I mean, I'm sure there is the odd family member that might say the odd thing here and there when I'm not in earshot. But, you know, more, I think there was, you know, the odd people in your past that, you know, you maybe were closer to, and then they see that you're this kind of different person and they fall by the wayside. But do you know what? They're not necessary then to who I am now and what I do today. So I was very, very, very lucky. Did you, Kay? I know I'm probably having to turn these questions around, but
no,
similar experience.
Well, yeah, so I had the same thing of being like, well, this is just who I am, so blah. And I don't know, to pinpoint it to that one thing is hard, isn't it? Like, it could have been just for any reason that it happened. Like, it could have just been like, oh, we're just not close enough to each other. Physically, we don't live close enough to each other, so we just stop seeing each other and then we just forget about each other. Like, it could just be anything. Yeah, I don't think there was anyone who was like, do you know, I just can't accept your homosexuality.
Yeah. And it's really hard because like when you start finding your tribe, like especially for me, once I got to Brighton and started spending more time in like the LGBTQ venues and stuff like that, and then you meet people and you kind of hear their stories and you're like, wow. I think that's when I realized how fucking lucky I am, because you hear some of the things that they've gone through and the, you know, the unacceptance they've had to deal with, and then it makes your own story like even more like, God, I'm just really blessed. I'm just really, really lucky that's the family that I came from, that the love is more important than who you are spending your life with or what you're doing with other people, you know. And I think it's something that we always have, like as LGBTQI plus people, and that's why I can never understand why people from our own, you know, extended family hate on each other. I'll never understand that, because we really we've all come from that shit, you know what I mean, and found who we are and come together, and now you want to make each other feel shit. I'll never ever ever understand that.
It's depressing.
It's really
a waste of energy as well. It's not. So yeah, the other thing I was going to say is like, I think sometimes you engineer your life in that way though, right? Like I had always been myself. Maybe not always, but you know, like those bits of me came through quite evidently. And so I think that everyone in my life had an opportunity to get used to that. Or if they weren't into that, they just didn't have anything to do with me in the first place. Yeah, so it's hard. Like I never did that thing that some people do, which is like playing the game and people pleasing and like doing what's expected of you, and then getting to a point where you're like, oh, by the way, everyone, I'm not that. Like so I don't think it was jarring for anyone to find out.
I read this really like it sounds a bit like one of those bumpy affirmation things, but I read it online the other day and it really like resonated. And that was, you can be a good person with a kind heart and still tell people to fuck off when you need to. And it's like that energy, like you can, you know, there are moments where you have to be like, no, I don't want you in my life. And, you know, you're not helping me anymore. I'm not helping you anymore. We're not bonding anymore. And that may not be because you've come out or because of who you are. It's just because friendships and relationships change as we grow up as well and get a bit older.
But like, you know, like extending that phrase and taking out the swearing, you can be a good person with a kind heart and still like have people hate you. Like it's just like it's just life. And you should not waste your energy on those people. But I mean, that's easier said than done. And I'm not trying to be like,
very
just
true.
Kick them out of your life. Like, you know, overthink it for 3 months and then kick them out of your life. That's the way I would do it.
That's very true. Very, especially at like 4 a.m. when you can't sleep. And you're like, but what did I say wrong? What did I say wrong? Like, you didn't
get
say
to the point
wrong.
where you are so exhausted that you've got no choice but to give up on that friendship. Just do that.
Sound advice. I like that. I'm going to put that on a t-shirt. Put that on a t-shirt.
You might have bags under your eyes, but you'll get there. So what happened to Flexible Ashford Man?
Oh my God.
Did I get that right?
Well, yeah. His name was actually Ashley as well, so we're not far off. He was all the drama, like any of those kind of people are. The non-emotional. They don't give you a lot. The reason they don't give you a lot is because they're hiding many a skeleton in that closet, and it ended up getting quite dramatic and being really full on. And when I had to go back, obviously, to university to go back to Somerset, it was very much like, well, if you go, then we can't carry on because I'm not prepared to come there. And I don't want to do a long distance thing. And I just thought, listen, he's beautiful. He's really beautiful, Charlie. He really, really is. But it's not worth this aggravation. And for me, it was like, look, I'm going back to Yeovil, and I had to deal with going back to obviously being in the same place that my ex was. And obviously that had all gone like a bit towards the end. So I was like, I can't carry that with me as well. And then he just kind of fell off the face of the earth. And I guess, that's where that ended. But for me, it's like...
Do you remember his surname then? Shall we look him up?
Oh, I think it was... I have. Do you know what? Like, I think, you know, those nights of like the red wine nights where you're like, oh, I'm going to do a bit of Facebook stalking, try and find this person. And then if anything turned up, I was like, no, this is not a door worth going down again.
Do you know what? I have actually forgotten the name of my first boyfriend. And so,
have you?
Well, I mean, like, I know his first name is Adam.
Right.
But I can't for the life of me remember his second name. And that's like such a blessing because I can't do any like late night looking up. But like, I've gone through all these like creative ways of like trying to figure out how to find him. And I just cannot find him. And like,
it's for the best.
I mean, like what difference will it make if I know what he's up to in his life? But it's, I've every now and then it's like, oh yeah, I used to go out with that guy. Oh yeah, what's he doing?
I always feel really sorry for the people who have a horrible ex who gets famous, because then they have to see that ex everywhere. Like, can you imagine being James Corden's ex and being like, oh my God, I can't stand that person, and
like
they're
the shame
everywhere.
Wasn't enough.
Like, the shame would be so bad already, but then you'd have to see that stupid face in every fucking film and every TV show. Like, I always feel so. Hopefully, if any of my exes are out there, don't any of you get famous, because I don't want to see your faces ever again. Your exes for a reason. And
especially don't write a song called Charlie that becomes a number one bestseller.
I'd be furious. I'd be furious. I'd be like, royalties.
You could dine out on that though.
You really could. That's true. I mean, Adele's exes must just be like, oh God, we're just writing her another album every time we break up with her. Like, they must have a little committee. Like, how much do you think you've made, Adele, this week? I've probably made her about $3 million.
She's just got to think of new ways to get dumb. So that's the pressure she's under.
Very, very true. It must be a very hard life.
So Ashley's out of the picture. You're back in Yeovil, but then you're not in Yeovil because you moved to Worthing, and then you're living with a bunch of people, and then you go to Jack Horner.
And then we go to the Jack Horner. I remember we there was another club in Worthing. There was a really trashy club by the train station, and a lot of the students went there for like always. Why are they always by train stations? It's hilarious. And I think that was called Easton's, something along that vibe. And I remember being there one night on one of the like student nights and dancing and having like time of my life. But it's all very straight, you know what I mean? And you're like, it's great, but it's and I remember like chatting to some random girl in the smoking area like you do and being like, oh, where are you going, like artist? And she was like, oh, I'm going to the gay pub. And I was like, sorry, the what? Sorry, the what? What? I didn't get this memo. I didn't get this. What are we talking about? She's like, yeah, there's like a gay pub in Worthing, and she's like, it's not open really late, so we're gonna head there pretty quickly. And I was like, okay, cool. Like, I'm going. I'm getting my things. I'm coming with you. And it was, all respect if anyone I still know that works there, it was a dive pub. It really was a dive pub, right? But I remember going in and there was like this little bar, the pool table in the back, a tiny little stage where probably some crazy drunk person was doing karaoke, and cute people behind the bar. And being like, this is it. I love this. This is like, I feel like I can relax because I quite like that old man pub environment. I'm quite into that. I feel like there's a familiarity that I really love about. That's being a South Londoner, I think, deep down. Like, I like an old man pub. And just being like, this is really cool. This is really like, there's no people like super dressed up. There was no kind of like fancy lighting or any of that kind of stuff. It was just people sitting and chilling and enjoying themselves and avoiding listening to that mad woman on the karaoke. And it was, I just thought, wow, this is really cool. And then we stayed there for a couple of drinks. It was lovely. And then literally the next night I was like, I'm going there. Like, I'm not even doing the mad dancing place. I'm not into any of that. I want to go there.
At 4, I'm waiting for them to open. I'm storming in.
That's exactly it. I was like, I want to get a prime seat at the bar before the other people turn up. And I have made some really lovely friends, like kind of outside of the pub itself, just from my housemates and them meeting new people because they'd started a new term, and our house was a very social house. It was very much people coming over, and one of my friends, he was a bit younger than us guys, and I remember he came over one night and was like, oh, can I have like a chat? And I was like, yeah, of course you can. And I was like, oh, like Livy, the girl, I was like, she's not here. And he was like, no, I wanted to talk to you. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. I was like, oh, he's really cute, but cool. And then he was like, oh, I think I'm gay. And I was like, oh, okay. I was like, well, that's cool. I was like, have you like told anybody else? And he was like, no, not yet. I don't really like know what to do with it. And I guess I was coming across at that point in my life as a bit more confident. It was very open about the fact that I like guys and wasn't like hiding anything anymore. Never had a boyfriend. I was permanently single, but I was like the most single fun gay he'd ever met. That's how I felt. And I was like, well, look, why don't you come with me to this pub? And he had lived in Worthing like his whole life. Was like, oh no, like we say don't go in that pub. Like what they'd done is they created this really seedy reputation for this place because it was the only gay bar there. And so what they done is like almost a bit of a smear campaign and said like, oh no, you don't, that's for like the weirdos, you know what I mean? And I think that a lot of gay pubs, especially in smaller towns, they get that reputation. Like, don't go in there. Like, it's weird in there. You know what I mean? And I remember
everyone will hit on you as soon as you walk in.
Yes.
Like, I wish there were bars like that.
Yeah, I know. I know. I was like, that's what the gaydar's for, not the pub. Like, that's where you want to be going. And we ended up kind of going to the Jack, and we met, there was obviously like some, like older gay guys that were living in Worthing that were going there, and that was like their regular pub. And what was really nice about it is, okay, there might have been the odd snog here and there. Some things may have happened, but on the whole, it felt very like wholesome and felt very like, actually, they could tell that we were two kind of younger gay guys and were just trying to like kind of find our way in the gay world a little bit. And there was lots of, for all the nights of like mad karaoke and getting on the pool table and lock-ins, there were also lots of nights of just going there there and sitting and chatting and having a few beers. And, you know, for us, it was normally the prelude to like going out that night and getting in, you know, getting on the train to Brighton and coming, having like our mad nights out. But I always like looked forward to that bit really more than the going out and getting really kind of like off the tree. You know what I mean? Because it just felt very like, it was being able to have conversations. I think that was the main thing, because I didn't really have that in my life. I didn't have anyone in my family that was gay that I could kind of chat to, or any like older friends that had kind of maybe been through some stuff that you could talk to. And
so specifically, you're talking about those kind of intergenerational conversations.
Yeah, 100%. And, you know, not even people that were necessarily that much older than us, but had just obviously lived in a town where there was like this, you know, almost like this hub where they could go and meet other people and talk about it and feel relaxed in that environment. And, you know, like, weirdly, like going into a pub and like they're playing Britney Spears, and it's not ironically, it's because they actually like the song. Like all these little things that you feel like, oh, it just felt very, very comfortable. And yeah, it was just it was a really fun time, and it was like any excuse to kind of like, oh well, let's go down the Jack. And it was yeah, I really enjoyed it. It just was really nice to find people, have conversations, and feel like you could be yourself, and you could get on karaoke and be a bit flamboyant and silly, because you didn't feel like you were gonna, you know, get
clocked.
Get clocked or get even abused or have any trouble lead from it. You know what I mean? And I remember the odd time you'd be in there and like obviously some, you know, very like heterosexual people would walk in, and you know, you couldn't help yourself, but you'd finally be able to be like, we can give them daggers. How the tables have turned. You know, that.
How do you determine if
nice.
They're heterosexual?
Oh, the clothes, babe, the clothes. Come on, we all know. They weren't listening to Britney like they weren't listening to her like we were.
They didn't know the words to Lucky?
What? They didn't come in doing the oops hand movement, so we knew. No, I just you know, you could tell when there was like a kind of group of lads that would kind of stumble in there, like not realising maybe the vibe of the pub. And I mean, obviously all were welcome, and that was what was really nice about it. But there was, you know, I can remember a couple of instances where there might be a little bit of trouble, and instantly, you know, the whole pub would rally and it'd be like, no, out, we're not tolerating any of that here, you know what I mean? I remember being there one night when it got egged, and that felt really... Oh, wow. Yeah, it felt really horrible. It was horrible. And it was really opposite like a massive supermarket, and these kids had just gone and got eggs. And we were, you know, I mean, obviously you're in the pub, the music's playing, that kind of thing, but I just remember seeing them running past and all these like plop, 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 plop hit the window. And it just felt really sad. It was like, oh,
this is our one space. Yeah,
this is the one space. You know what I mean? And I think it was one of those things where we all just didn't talk about how sad it was. It was like, oh, that was annoying. Let's clean the window. Stupid kids. But inside, we all felt, oh, that's really shit. You know what I mean? That's really shit. Like, we don't need that crap. There's enough shit. Just let us sit here and have a drink. You know what I mean? Without having to deal with, oh, that horrible world out there can be really horrible sometimes.
And it's this kind of weird, like, punching down thing, right? Like, it's like, oh, no one's going to be really mad at us if we do this because everyone hates those fags anyway. So let's just go and do it.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Like, you know, there'd be no putting in a report about it or finding out who those kids were. Like, nothing would get done. Nothing. And it was very much like, I remember the landlord at the time saying, like, I'm not wasting my energy because I'm not going to get anything out of it. But it still felt like a safe space, and that was what was really good about it.
And so you were talking about not really registering when it shut. When did it shut?
Oh, God, I think it was like 2012, I believe, that it actually did close. And then it reopened in 2015, no longer as a gay bar. It's now called the Corner House, I think. And it's you're kind of like, you know, no disrespect to the lovely people I'm sure at the Corner House. I've never been there, so I can't.
No, fuck them.
No, fucking Corner House bitches, seriously. No, it just is another generic Worthing pub, as far as I've seen. So, you know, that whole thing now has gone. And, you know, I haven't been back to Worthing in quite a long time. I don't know if there's now an alternative kind of like space that was similar to the Jack that might have sprung up, but not that I saw, not that I've seen or heard of. I mean, we're not far from Brighton, and you know, in Worthing, it was always that thing of like, you know, when you're not that far from a place, I think like, you know, Manchester or London has a good, vibrant kind of gay scene. You do, I think, find that the spaces around it do slowly disappear because people more congregate in those big city spaces, and that might just be what happened to the Jack.
I'm going to ask you this question And I recognize that it's like a stupidly big question and that you couldn't possibly have the answer. So if you don't like have an opinion or anything, then that's absolutely fine. I've just ruined the question by over-explaining it. Sorry. Do you think that we're ever going to see small town gay bars again?
I don't know. Do you know, I think a lot as well, I think a lot of people get those interactions now probably from online. And it's obviously not the same thing. But, you know, a lot of people, I think, doing the world of the like RPDR UK fans, the Twitter and Instagram and Facebook stuff that I do associate with Drag Race, a lot of people go on social media now and go, oh, I'm looking for my tribe. I'm looking for people that are into this and into that. And if you know someone, can you like me and add me and follow me and da-da-da. And they probably create their own little chat groups and do that kind of thing. And what they're creating is online gay bars. And they're all probably, you know, kind of doing it a lot more virtually now. Now, I've lived in, you know, a big city, Brighton, for the past like 15, 16 years. So I haven't been in that kind of small town community for a while. Interesting enough, my family live in New Romney down in Kent, and I went back there to see my mum and sister to see a show in Folkestone. I don't know if you're aware of Folkestone.
I mean, I've heard
it's
of
down on the coast. So we were at Folkestone to see this musical theatre show, gay, and we were in the queue to go into the venue, and I saw this like quite like pumping looking pub opposite with lots of outside space, and then it had a massive disco ball, and I was like, oh my god, like that looks really cool in there. And my sister was like, yeah, that's Scuba, that's the gay pub. And I was like, a gay pub in Folkestone? Where were all these gay pubs when I was in Kent growing up as a confused teenager? And she was like, yeah, it's always been a gay bar, Charlie. Like, I'm sure I've told you that. And I was like, no, you have never told me that. Annoyingly, we had to go into the show because I was straight away like, I want to go in there. Like, I want to see all those people that took the piss out of me in school that are probably sitting in that gay bar now. And like, I know you were mean to me because you were gay as well. And you couldn't stand the fact that there was another gay. And that's why you probably were really horrible to me. But I feel like, yeah, probably in small towns, there are kind of like gay pubs, gay spaces, and they are kind of maybe springing back up. I mean, obviously you do this show quite a lot, and in your experience, I'm guessing a lot of them have disappeared and gone. Is that the general consensus?
Yeah. So there's two things that I want to respond, and I need to make sure I don't forget the second one when I start with the first one. The first one, this whole thing about people who were horrible to you when you were a kid, who are now gay, or who are now like, yay, everyone should be proud and free. Like, I have a real hard time reconciling that. And I'm a bit like, fuck you, you're not allowed to grow unless you apologize to me.
I want reformations. Yeah, no, I'm with you 100%.
How do you do it?
Well, do you know, I've had like a couple of different mixed experiences in this like field. I've had one where someone who will absolutely remain nameless because I wouldn't want to kind of out someone. That's not what I'm about.
Was it Barry?
It wasn't Barry. No, it wasn't Barry.
Was it David? Was it George?
No. Who messaged me kind of more in recent years on Facebook and was like, you know, the conversation started really generally and just like, oh, how are you? And I see you're in Brighton now. And I see you have a partner now and all this. And then went a bit more like, oh, I kind of wish back in the day that I'd said something, like I wish that I'd like kind of like made a move maybe. And I was totally like shocked by this. I was really blown away because this was not a person who I thought was anyway like in our way inclined. And I kind of was like, well, that's, you know, obviously like it's flattering and all really lovely. And I was like, oh, are you with someone now? Are you like, you know, have you like explored that side of you? And it's like absolutely not. Like I think what they've done is they've kind of reached out to me as like one of the only like gay people they know who they could like have a conversation with. And I find that really sad, you know. That's really, and you know, you try and do that thing of like, I'm not here.
I feel like everyone's gay mentor.
Yeah, I know. It is a bit like gay mentory, but you know what? I really don't have time to be everyone's gay mentor. The gay-ru, not the guru, the gay-ru. And you know, I've been very polite about the whole thing, but I remember being really shocked by that and really like, wow, like I did not expect that from that person, and wasn't necessarily someone that gave me a hard time, but was in that group of people that had given me a hard time. And you feel very
and sometimes doing nothing is also like as bad.
100%. I'm like, well, where were you with your? I want to, you know, do things with boys when I was like, but we all go through our own journey, you know what I mean? Hopefully that person will figure it out for themselves and all that kind of vibe. But it is weird. And then you have the other experience where people might pop up from the past and comment on something that you're tagged in, like whether it's dressing up at Halloween or stuff that I've done with like drag queens and stuff like that, and they're like, oh, I knew that was who they were, like, and it's like, well, what do you mean by that? You knew that's who I was? And it's like, oh, I knew you'd be like kind of one of them type vibe, and you're like, oh, fuck off, like, you know what I mean? It's 2021, seriously, like, are we never gonna? But they are the people, with no disrespect to anybody out there that is from a small town, that have stayed in those small towns and have that kind of like small town mentality, that one where it's like, it just, they've never really grown up and changed.
And what are they trying to achieve by saying
that?
Yeah,
I am that one. I am that one in the pink wig friend, the glitter around. Fucking deal with it. You know what I mean? Like, I'm having a great time doing
Fantastic.
it.
You have eyeballs. Brilliant.
Oh, dear.
Oh,
yeah.
People are so horrible.
Yeah.
I get what you're saying, and I agree with it, and my head agrees with it. Like, people have their own journeys, people change, people make mistakes.
Yeah.
But it's just that raw child in the middle of my core that's just like, no, you're not getting a second chance. I'm sorry. That's it.
There was that great scene Queer as Folk, the UK version of Queer as Folk, where he gets the main guy, like his school buddy kind of comes onto him and he like rebuffs him and it's like, no, I'm not interested. And then like a couple of months later, he sees that same school bully in a gay bar, and the school bully is like living his life, and he gets up on the microphone and it's like, he shouldn't be allowed in this space. He put me through hell. He's not a true ally. Like, and I just was like, I want to be that moment, that character. Like, I think that's where you're coming from. Like, no, you don't get to be in this space. You don't get to celebrate with us. You don't get to listen to Lady Gaga and learn the dance moves. You fucked that. You should have been supportive when we needed it.
The other thing that I wanted to say, when you were talking about like people finding their tribe, and isn't it funny how like everyone talks about their tribe? It's like 5 years ago, no one talked about their tribe. But anyway, that's a by the by.
Yeah.
When people are looking for their tribe online, the thing that's different from, other than it's a virtual space and not a physical space, is that you're not in there with people who have different worldviews than you. Because you're so like niche in like what you're looking for. You're looking for, this kind of person who likes this and who lives here and da da da. And so you're not having those small town experiences where it's a pub where it's like, well, there is only one gay bar. We've got no choice. We have to go to this place. Yeah. And that guy there is really creepy and gross, but I'm gonna have to learn to like live in the same sphere as him.
Deal with it.
And like, in the examples you're talking about, it's like, oh, I prefer Raja to Katya.
Yes. Yeah.
People make conflict out of that, but it's not really a conflict.
Yeah, 100%. And I think you're right. It's when people that are all into the same thing come together, where's the conversation going to go other than talking about the thing they all came there to talk about? So it's not the same experience as, like you say, being in a pub in a real world environment and living it. Because one of the things that was really great about that is that you would have the odd person who you couldn't stand, and no shadow of a doubt they'd always be a regular as well, and you'd have to do that whole hi, you know what I mean, that type vibe. And I had a great day, lovely. Oh my god, we've both been in here for 3 hours. I didn't realise, you know what I mean, that type of thing. But that's exciting. That is interesting. Do you know what I mean? It's like, oh god, I bet we're going to go there and he's going to be sitting there like, oh, I bet it's going to be an owl table. You know that thing? Like, I bet there'll be an owl table. Like, And you'd always bump into them like at the bar, you know, and you like both ordering a drink and you lean in to order and they'll always be like next to you and you're like, oh fuck's sake, like now we've got to do the real hi, oh how's your day been, like I hate you. Not that I hate anyone, I'm very passive and very lovely.
But absolutely. And that, like, you learn to like just exist with other people that you can't stand, which I guess you're not really doing in the same way in those spaces with your tribe, and I'm doing the inverted commas, everyone.
Yeah.
Yeah, that whole tribe thing I find really fascinating.
It's interesting. It's like you say, it's a word that's kind of come up out of nowhere. I mean, I get a lot, like obviously the fandom, you know, and we get that with the drag race vibe, like, oh, you're just the fandom. And then what annoys me about that is that you're just saying this whole group of people are going to have the same mentality. Like, I'm sure there are people in those tribes within a tribe that probably do have different opinions, but to stay within that group, they probably keep them to themselves. and that just I'm not into that. You know what I mean? I don't really enjoy that. I quite like to be challenged and to have different opinions. I think that's really important. And yeah, you don't get that in your little tribes.
Like to do that when it's not actually talking to each other, when it's words typed in. Like I find that really hard because my sense of humor does not translate.
I can imagine, actually. I can.
Just sound like a bitch. I'm sorry, anyone who's interacted with me online, and I've just sounded like a bitch. It's definitely not been my intention. What do you remember most from those days?
I mean, back in those days, there was a lot of drink involved. So
nothing.
It was not really a lot. No, I think what I remember the most is just that feeling of being like safe space is a word that also gets thrown around a lot with words like tribe recently, but that genuinely felt like a safe space. And I think that was just the first time in my life that I had, experience going to a safe space that I could go on the regular. You know what I mean? That it wasn't like a one-off, like, being like young and partying and you go to like fun fab things like GAY in London and stuff like that and be like, oh wow, this is amazing. And like coming over to Brighton and going to Revenge, that was always like, wow, this is like really exciting. But this was the first time there was one that was like on my doorstep with people who I got to converse with and get to know. And just that feeling of, I wanted to be there all the time. It really was. I was just like, couldn't wait to like, get back from uni or get back from work or whatever the situation was, get changed, get dolled up and go down there and just sit there and be like, oh, I feel really relaxed and really at home in a space that like that old man pub vibe that I've always felt quite uncomfortable in. I think that was what was quite entertaining about it as well for me, because that whole like straight man pub vibe, you know what I mean? And it's like suddenly I was in what looked like a straight man pub, but they were playing the Britney. There was cute guys behind the bar. We were chatting about silly things and being outrageous and being silly and being flamboyant and not having to check ourselves constantly. And that just felt really amazing. You know what I mean? It really was. And I'm really lucky that I got to be there during those, I think, were quite like golden years for that place. And it is a real shame that it's not there anymore. I remember when I first went to Worthing and saw that it wasn't, it changed its name to The Stage. And I went and saw it as a stage, and unfortunately it was like closed on that. It was like a Monday afternoon, and they were obviously not doing great. So they were trying to, do that thing that pubs do where they close certain days. And I was like really gutted, like, oh, we can't go in there. And then it must have been a few years later when we went to Worthing again, and suddenly it was just all gone. And it was just this really generic looking pub. And it was just like a bit of a heartbreak moment. It was like, oh, that's really like, that's gone now. And I don't have many photos from that time because, we were still back in the days of not great camera phones and all that. So you didn't, so it's really like, it's just all in here. And that's really weird in this day and age because everything's so like slapped on a computer screen, slapped on a phone screen. You can relive it straight away. I mean, Facebook's constantly reminding you what you were doing 15 years ago. You know what I mean? But those memories, they feel a bit more special because they're mine. You know what I mean? And that's what's really nice about it.
Yeah.
I mean, like really, this is like the first generation to grow up with social media being an instant part of their childhood, their teenage years. And I don't think we really have seen like, maybe like the ramifications of what social media is going to have. Yeah. They're so fucked up. Like they're so fucked up. Honestly, where I work with a lot of like younger waiters and waitresses, that kind of thing. And sometimes I hear them talking, and I'm like, wow, like the conversations they're having are just like above and beyond my head because I'm like, you're talking about really intense stuff. Like, everything's very like everyone's self-aware now. Like everyone feels like they can kind of brand themselves. And it's like, when did we start talking like that? When did we start talking like we were IKEA products? Like, this is my brand. I just find that whole mentality really strange. And that would have been like snapped out of you in pubs like the Jack Horner. Like, what do you mean your brand? Fucking shut up, have a drink. Do you know what I mean? Like that maybe they're missing out.
I do find that fascinating, that whole branding of yourself and how limiting that is. I find it really limiting anyway. Maybe other people don't because they've only got like one interest and so therefore it fits their brand. But like when you can't be this multi-dimensional person who like, likes construction and drag race, like you kind of have to you can't talk about one part of your life. You kind of have to do this. You kind of have to lean into this. You have to make sure you look a certain way. I find that all a bit stifling, a bit difficult.
Yeah, it's quite sad. It's, you know, like, branch out, chill out, and relax. You know what I mean? And just...
But meanwhile, they're making like £200,000 a month, and you're sitting here stuck talking to me.
Yeah. This has been one of the most entertaining podcasts I've ever done. So I really enjoyed it. It's nice. I really, really had a good time. Like, absolutely.
You don't need to say that. It's okay. Let's bitch about the people from your work. Come on.
Yeah. No, because they will listen to this.
Oh, okay.
I love all of you.
I love you
all
too,
of you.
Timmy.
Yeah. See, you heard it here first. No, but it's really nice to like have that stroll down memory lane. Do you know what I mean? It's just so nice to think about it, and also it makes you realize, like, God, I was such a fucking mess. Like, I was such a dramatic little mess. Like, I really fucking was. Like, and that makes you have a bit more empathy for for the younger people that I'm around, because I'm like,
I don't think that I've come away with the impression that you were a dramatic mess. Maybe I need more illustrative examples.
No, I mean, it was just very, like, obviously, like I've said before, like, we were kind of like the younger people in that pub, but we were always like the ones that were like up doing the karaoke, and it'd always be like, inevitably, when it's students all living together, that so-and-so slept with so-and-so, and then she didn't do the washing up, and that didn't happen. And it'd always get pulled into the Jack corner when we were there having a drink. So it would always start off really nice, and it would always be like, you know, it would get to that point where it's like, normally it was like the kicking out time, and that would be the point where someone would want to bring up the fact that the washing up wasn't done that night. And by this point, you're all like, you know, 4 sambucas in, and you're like, oh, well, I'll tell you what, you know what I mean? And there was always that kind of vibe.
Walls are down.
Yeah. Yeah. The drama was minuscule. It was, you know, that was probably
there is
on in
nothing more fun than blown out of proportion drama.
Oh my God, yes. Yes. We live for it, right?
I am not backing down from this fight. I do not care how unimportant it is. I am going to win.
And that's one of the best things as well about being in a pub where someone else is having that blown out of proportion drama, and you get real life television. Real life television, there's nothing like it when you're just sitting there watching like, oh my God, and now she's left, and now she's got up and left. Is she going to come back? She's come back. Like, I love that. I love that.
Whenever there's one person whose volume is much louder than the other person, and the other person's like, can we just keep it down? And then they're like, no, I'm not going to keep it down. Oh, that's so much fun. Oh.
I have to say, in that situation, I'm the one going, no, I will not keep it down. Like, I am definitely that person. Like, yeah, good.
I don't care who hears this, because I'm right. They'll agree with me.
Yeah, definitely be the loud one in that situation, 100%.
Yeah. Well, also, like, it is actually a good tactic, because the other person will back down if they don't like having people looking at them. They'll just be like, right, fine, you're correct.
Yeah.
So there you go.
Yeah. But that's like the situation where it's like the drunk person trying to argue with the sober barman. Like, the barman is always going to win that, and I love watching those explode as well. And then the barman literally does it like, security. That's one of my favourite things to watch in a pub, to watch that moron get thrown out. And I have been that moron occasionally, but more often than not, I'm the person watching it.
So when you are that moron, how long do you wait till you go back to that bar? Or do you just accept
So I
that
was
never
once, oh no, you never accept it. You never accept it, because then they've won. So I remember I got banned for life from a gay bar in Brighton. And I would love to be really juicy and gossipy here in the UK, but the problem is I don't know why I got banned for life. That's probably how messed up I was that night. And I remember going back the night after and being told by security, you're banned for life. And I was like, but why? And they were like, the fact you can't remember makes it worse, Charlie. So you're
Do you
definitely
get like a
banned
certificate
for life.
or something?
And I was like, but... Well, I thought I might get a diploma, I might get some sort of like special trophy. Like, there was none of that. But then the bar that I've been banned from, unfortunately, had a fire. So there was a fire at this bar.
Don't
so
admit to anything on this recording.
Do not
admit
nothing
to
to do with me. Nothing to do with me. But after they did a bit of a refurb, I thought I'd be really cheeky, and I went back and I was like, well, now it's like technically a different bar. Would I be able to come back in? And I think I was so brazenly cheeky, they were like, okay, you've got one more chance. And then I was allowed back in the bar, and thankfully never got kicked out of anywhere again for anything.
So
like
you didn't
that.
like walk in with a lighter that you were flicking on, going like, now that the place is burnt down.
With an aerosol can, just like no, nothing of the sort. I was absolutely on record, nothing to do with that fire. It just so happened to be around the time that I thought, well, I can hopefully get back into it, and they did let me back in. I think it was just from being so brazen.
Sometimes
like,
charm works.
You know, we've gone through this massive tragedy. We've spent loads of money, and you have to cheat to come back and be like, yeah, but can I come back in now? But yeah, it worked.
Good. Do you have any memories from the Jack Horner or clubbing from your own queer scene that you want to share? Well, if you do, please get in touch. I want to create the biggest online record of people's memories and stories of queer clubbing. Go to lostspacespodcast.com and find the section Share a Lost Space and tell me all about what you got up to. You can also find me on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter with the user handle LostSpacesPod. Find out more about Charlie by following him on Twitter as either his personal account, which is I am Charlie Sayce, or the account for RuPaul's Drag Race UK Fans, which is RPDR UK Fans. Lost Spaces is not only a podcast, but a concept record as well. I have been writing songs about queer venues and the people who used to live their lives there, and will be releasing songs over the coming year. You can hear the first single, Well Groomed Boys, which is also playing underneath my talking right now, on all good streaming platforms. If you like this episode, I would really appreciate if you subscribed, left a review on your podcast platform, or just told people who you think might be interested in giving it a little listen to. I am Kay Anderson, and you have been listening to Lost Spaces.